All right, I think we're live. Welcome, guys. How you guys doing tonight?
How's it going?
Awesome.
Good to be back. I missed last week. Hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. Everybody have a good time Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
good Thanksgiving.
Still eating turkey as we speak.
Yeah, it's good. That's what I love. The leftovers, those turkey sandwiches. It's good.
Exactly.
Welcome to everybody who's in the chat so far. We'll let a few more people get in before we get into the main topic tonight. We got Rock the Watch here, Matt Stingray with his channel.
What's going on?
Hope you'll check him out if you don't know him. He put out a cool video this week about a new Breitling that he got.
Beautiful
Super
piece.
Ocean 42 millimeter, really nice white dial, I believe. And great video. Check that out. Average Joe's here as well. One of your most recent videos was a state of the collection video. And if you haven't seen that, if you have 30 minutes, you got all 53 watches in 30 minutes. I was amazed at that, brother.
Thank you. But I think after next week, I'm going to be cutting that down quite a bit because a lot of them are selling on eBay as we speak. So
yeah, that's great.
I gotta do that.
Uh-huh.
You're cutting down, you're trimming down the collection. So.
Yeah. Gluttony isn't a good thing, man. It's one of the 7 deadly sins.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the end goal is here with all this trimming back. What you got planned? You want to share anything or no?
My lips are sealed.
All right.
2021.
Okay. We got Watch Chris here as well. I think he put about 100 videos out this week. Is that about right?
Yeah. He's close.
I don't know how he does it, man.
He's killing
impressive.
It is. It really is.
He's got a lot of good stuff out this week. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Some stuff on Grand Seiko, I remember. A lot of microbrand stuff this week.
What's on Dwayne Johnson's wrist?
I watched that one too. I watched that full video about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson there. Some of his pieces.
Watches. Some pretty cool watches that he wears.
Yeah. So all good stuff. If you're in the chat and are not subscribed to these guys, please get subscribed. But we'll just jump into the main topic tonight and get started with the chat. So the main topic, let's see if I can get it up here on the banner, is basically just something I was thinking about. Kind of basically your video, Average Joe, kind of got me thinking about this because your collection is huge. You've been collecting for a number of years now, and obviously things are changing for you. And so it kind of just got me thinking, how collections change over the years, and basically personally for you guys, how has your personal collection changed and progressed, maybe digressed somewhat over the years in certain points? I don't know. But just kind of want to talk through the ebb and flow of your personal collection. And I was thinking to start with maybe me, probably because I haven't been collecting too long. So maybe, I don't know, Matt Stingray, you've been collecting for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And then Average Joe, how long has it been for you?
Man, at least 15, 20 years.
Okay. And then Chris would probably be 25 plus. So maybe I'll start and we'll go from the newest collector to the oldest, because I think those who have collected longer will.
Here also, or my
probably.
We were talking about that off camera. We were kind of curious. You want to reveal that, or you want to keep it?
I'm 41.
I'm oldest.
So then you're not.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
42.
older than me.
I am 46.
46?
Yes,
46,
sir.
You don't look 46.
42.
You do
Thank
not
you,
look
sir.
46.
Thank you, sir.
And
I
I'm
have a young
32.
wife. So
32.
My wife's 34. So yeah. So
keep you young. All right. Good.
Yeah.
There you go, man.
Nice. I'll start out with my collection. I've only been collecting for a couple years, probably, and my collection's small right now, probably 8 or 9 watches. I forget exactly, but I found myself, one of the changes that has been made for me, or is in the process of being changed, is I do wear dress watches. And in the beginning, I bought a couple cheap Orient Symphonies, 2 of the same watch. One was all blacked out, PVD coated, and then the other one was kind of a silverish white dial, stainless steel bracelet model. Both the same Orient Symphony, cheap automatic movement, $70 or something for each of them. But I'm finding myself wanting to kind of up the ante a little bit in the dress watch realm and kind of get into something probably Swiss, something that has maybe a little more history behind it in the brand, and something that's more high quality. So another thing that's changing for me, I think I think I had 2 or 3 Casio Pro Trek watches. They're big, over 44 millimeters. And I'm finding myself not wearing them as much. So I'm thinking of also getting rid of those, and I'm not sure what I'm going to buy yet, but those are some things that are changing in my collection. And I know we talked about this before off camera, but I've been looking for a dress watch to replace these other ones, saving up money and stuff for that. And I was looking at something with small seconds. So maybe someone in the comments can throw some thoughts out there. Maybe we talked about this before. I don't know if we were live when we did that, but I'm also, the idea was brought up to look at some vintage pieces. And so I've been doing a little bit of that, looking at some vintage Omegas. They do have one from the 1950s that has this cool sub-seconds sub-dial. It's not technically a sub-dial. It just has like the crosshairs, no tick mark, mark, but just the little hand going around. And it looks great. I'm not sure exactly the size of it. I'm sure it's pretty small being from the 1950s, but anyway, that's some of the way my collection's been kind of in the beginning stages of changing, since I'm still fairly new at this. So how about you, Matt Stingray, over the couple years you've been collecting?
So yeah, I talked about this before. I have been seriously collecting for a couple of years. I've always been one of those guys that's always had a watch. I mean, you and I, before we got in the chat, was talking about, I remember a few years back, my wife actually bought me, I didn't even know, like a lot of people, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't even know what a fashion watch was. She just found this Michael Kors watch. It was like a chronograph with a blue face, and it broke pretty quick. I don't even think it lasted a year. And now I look back on it and I'm like, now it makes sense. I had this Victorinox way years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago. My father bought me. And the crystal, I know, at last couple of years, I didn't know why the crystal would never scratch. The watch got scratched, all scratched up, but the crystal was pristine. And I got another watch, and the crystal immediately started scratching. Well, I didn't know the difference between sapphire and mineral crystal and all that kind of stuff. Why did this one scratch? Why did the other, so I've always been like that. I just kind of on the edges of, I always wore a watch, always had maybe 1 or 2 watches, but didn't really dive in like deep crazy until a couple years ago. And that also reflected my income too. So as soon as I was able, I had some disposable income, and I kind of slowed down on some of the other hobbies I had, and I really got heavy into watches. I've always been kind of like a dive watch guy, and it really hasn't. I have a few dress pieces. I have like an Orient Sun and Moon version 4, which is kind of a cool watch. I have a few pieces on leather, but I'm not really a big fan of rubber straps or leather straps. Just a kind of a steel sports watch guy, and it's kind of stayed the same. But it definitely has gone. When I got into it, I bought it for a couple of. When I started getting heavy into it, I bought a couple of. I don't even remember what it was, Casios, and then the first quote unquote expensive watch I bought was a Tissot C-Star, the one that I had in our last chat. That was $500. That was big for me. That was, whoa, $500 on a watch, and it's just gone up from there. I got the bug, and I like expensive watches. I don't know. I do. Yeah. I don't. So
that's awesome. What are you wearing tonight?
Tonight I'm wearing Omega Seamaster.
Very nice.
Silver dial.
Nice.
Yeah. Sweet. So how about you, Average Joe, with your collection? You can do a wrist check too if you want to start us off, but very nice. Breitling.
Oh, yeah.
Day date with the Artem strap. So watch collecting is kind of like when you eat steak. You know, you enjoy that chuck for a while, but then you get yourself one of these, and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can go back to chuck.
Right.
But no, honestly though, like I like watches of all ranges. When I first started, my first watch was a Fossil Big Tick that I still own. And you know, would I buy a Fossil today? Probably not. Not because I have anything against the brand, but it's I don't know. I kind of wear away from the fashion brands at this point, and I'm more into like brands that have some real horology behind them, some history. So you know, I've become a huge Breitling fan, as you guys know. I love my Omegas, but some of the more affordable watches, like Hamilton Tissot, I have a huge respect for, and I have a couple of those in my collection as we speak. But a lot of guys in the or guys and gals in the comments were talking about the Orients. One of my favorite brands, honestly.
They're great watches.
I think you definitely get huge bang for your buck. I actually own the Orient Mako green bezel. That one you can pick up for $110 all day long, and checks off all the boxes. And it's a really cool looking watch. So I think when I first started, I liked the huge watches, the in your face watches, the diamonds, and just the bling bling bling. You know, and today, I mean, actually, I have them up on eBay now. I'm selling my diamond watches, and because my taste has changed. I'm actually more conservative now. You know, I like the more clean, classic look. So I think, you know, I've gone from like the really loud, obnoxious, huge, heavy watches to now the more classic sizes, the more classic, clean dials, and I can totally see the progression over the years, and I've had quite a few years in watch collecting, and I think that's one of the biggest changes I've seen is just moving away from that and going into a more traditional type collection.
Yeah, that's cool. How about you, Chris? What are you wearing tonight, and how has your many years of collecting kind of changed?
First, I am wearing two watches. I am wearing the Blancpain Waltham Bathyscaphe, and I am wearing the watch that I sent you guys today to show you guys the Sacred Crafts La Grande Mère. This is the one with the bronze and stainless steel two-tone.
Sweet,
nice,
automatic.
Yeah,
that'd
be unique.
Yeah, very cool. I'm coming out with a video on that soon. Actually, I in the video I'm going to talk about how I am the the East Coast sales representative for that brand now. So I'm going to be doing a video. It's going to be sort of like a sales pitch, but you know, I got to do what I got to do.
Get the word out.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool upstart, and they're actually pretty affordable, pretty cool watches. Anyway, I started collecting like a lot of people, where I was given a watch, and one of the first watches I was given was a Superman watch. I think it was actually a Fossil. I'm not even sure. I got to be honest. And then at some point, an ex-girlfriend of mine bought me a Seiko, which was a kinetic movement, and then later on, you know, I just was. I don't know if I was gifted another watch, or it was just, you know, I just sort of acquired a watch somehow, and then I really just started liking watches, and I may have gotten into quartz watches more in the beginning, and I think a lot of people do that. They just sort of look at a watch, they don't really know anything about the movement or anything about the brand, really. Again, I think it was like a Movado. I'm not even sure anymore. And then eventually I just went down, like I said, I go down the rabbit hole, and then I started looking at all different websites, and this is when, like, there was no websites. I think it was called newwatch.com was the only website where you can buy watches. It was like,
oh wow,
it was before, it was a very long time ago, and that's where I bought one of my first luxury watches. But I had bought watches up until then from like the mall. I would go to the mall, buy a Seiko. I would buy Fossils and other
Mhm.
brands that you could buy at the mall, and then eventually Citizens and things like that. And I would get rid of them or whatever the hell I would do with them. And then I bought a Bois Mercier. That was a quartz watch.
Hmm.
And then from there, I just I kept on wanting to know more about it, and then eventually I got into automatic watches, and then eventually, as I got into automatic watches, I started realizing there was a difference between your typical automatic watch and your typical Swiss automatic watch. Maybe there was there's a price difference, but there's also a quality difference. And then I started looking at. I got into Panerai at some point, and then I really started loving Panerai. I couldn't afford one. I was a chef at the time, and I just couldn't afford to buy something like a Panerai. So I went the homage route, and I would try and find watches that look like a Panerai. And long story short, eventually, I started buying Panerai. I started going down the road of buying, the high end Swiss stuff, and then I started sort of finding more joy in buying some affordable watches from time to time, and getting like a really high quality, affordable watch, like a microbrand or a Seiko. And then there was some point where I had a few Seikos. I sold them all. I actually gave away a few of my Seikos, which I kicked myself today about doing that. And then it was I think it was a few years ago, I bought the SBDC 061. So from there, for a majority of my collection timing, time of collecting, I was always looking for luxury watches. So I was into, Breitling, Omega, and those are the watches that are the core part of my collection. And then I have, my Panerai collection. I have a Vacheron collection. I have that sub collection. And then I would sell watches and then buy better watches and sell watches, buy better watches. But I bought an SBDC 061. That was one of the first videos that I did on YouTube. And I just love that watch. And it wasn't that expensive. When I bought it, the prices were pretty low. I think it was like $500. And I couldn't imagine why anybody would not buy this watch. It was so amazing. I thought it was so good. It was made so well. It fit really well. The quality was so good. Then I got a Tissot C-Star 1000. I thought that was insane for the price. And then I started putting videos on eBay on everything else goes on eBay.
Right.
I put it on YouTube, and that's where I started this. But then I think there's like another turn to my collection over the last maybe 3 or 4 years. Before I started doing YouTube, I started looking towards vintage watches more, and for two reasons. The same reason why I like micro brands is because they offer a really good value. And there's a lot of times, like the watch that I'm wearing tonight, one of the reasons why I wore it, you could walk into Blancpain, you could buy a 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe right now for $12,000 or whatever the hell they charge. I don't even know. Or you could buy a vintage one and pay way, way, way less in certain situations. But this is a Waltham. This is going to be less than the Blancpain branded ones. But it's an interesting kind of thing, and I've kind of gotten into that a lot more. And I think that's the progression of a lot of collectors. They sort of go that quartz route, gifted quartz route, and then they get into the watches and they start buying more and more and more expensive watches. They sell some watches, then they consolidate down, and they go from 100 watches to 50 watches to 20 watches, and then they go back up, and then they go back down. And that's I've done that so many times. It's
Yeah. I was thinking about how people start out in collecting, and some people, we might say, make certain mistakes in the beginning, at least from our perspective, but I was thinking, people start out in the hobby differently, and the way they start out really probably depends on how they've been influenced by others. If their friend has this huge Invicta at high school, you know, and they look at that, then they want one too, or whatever. And like Chris, you mentioned you got a Superman watch. Like,
Yeah.
what was that, like a certain brand, or what was that?
So I think it was Fossil.
Fossil, right.
My grandmother bought it for me. I was probably, 13.
Yeah.
So 12
So
or
that was your
13.
first influence from somebody else. And so, I mean, I think with YouTube today, we can kind of avoid a lot of the beginner mistakes, so to speak, because we can go on YouTube and we can watch people that have been collecting for years and know what they're talking about. And before we even make a first purchase, we can kind of get an idea of what's good, what to avoid. And you don't have to make the mistake of buying movement watches or Filippo Loretti or like many people do, because they don't know any better. But if you just do a little research, you can buy a quality piece for your first watch, and you can really start off right. I think, I mean, I hate to say people make a mistake because people like certain things maybe that I don't like in watches, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Is there like any mistakes to avoid that you would give to someone beginning collecting? If someone came up to you and said, "Hey, I want to get into watches," is there any mistakes I should avoid when starting a collection? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I would like to say that like the fashion brands and some of the watches that you mentioned were really gateway watches to a collection, and you live and learn. Like you're
learning from it.
Yeah. I mean, some people that have bought these watches really enjoy them and continue to enjoy them. And, I'm not gonna look down on them. And I'm sure you're not saying that either, but for us watch connoisseurs who like horology and history and whatnot, we kind of like grow with our collections, and we say, okay, well, I'm not going to pay $200 for, let's just say, an Invicta, for instance, when I can make that $200 go even further with a watch that checks off a lot more boxes. Sapphire crystal, maybe even getting a Swiss Etta movement, a little bit more than that, I'm sure, but just as an example, you kind of learn the mistake. Because I mean, I've overpaid for watches considerably. Over my years, paying hundreds of dollars for watches that don't check off any of the boxes that are absolute. They're must-haves. I'm paying $500 for a watch that doesn't have a mineral crystal, or it doesn't have a sapphire crystal, it has a mineral crystal. I'm paying $500 for a watch that has a cheap Miyota movement in it. Press clasp, hollow end links. Folded over bracelet, not checking off any of the boxes that I would need to have checked off. At $500, I could buy a Swiss-made Tissot.
That's right.
With an 80-hour power reserve, solid piece. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, so that's how you learn. You learn through these quote unquote mistakes that you've made, and you kind of progress in that, so that now. You give me $100, I can get you a watch that, may be worth $1,000. I can get it for you on the secondhand market. I can check off all the boxes, but that's because I've been in it for so long, and that's just how you progress.
Well, do you guys collect, or have you collected anything else? And do you find that is a natural pattern with collecting? Because for me, it does, whether it's guitars or pew-pews or whatever it is I collected. And when I started, I typically didn't have a lot of money, so I just wanted to get like my first guitar. I had to get it. And now looking back on it, it was junk, and I should have waited. But you don't wait. You just want one, and then you're scooping up stuff. And then as you start to learn, like you're saying, you're paying to learn. It's like paying for education. You're like, okay, well, I made this mistake, or it's not necessarily doing what I want it to do, and so you progress higher to higher and higher products, because it's not. Something that is expensive is not all marketing and fluff, and they're trying to rip you off. Expensive things are quality made. They typically last. I have a friend of mine at work. He says, buy nice or buy it twice, because they last. If you buy nice or buy it twice. If you buy something that's really, really whether it's a watch or whatever it is that you collect, they tend to last more longer. They tend to be made of better materials. They tend to have more attention to detail and stuff like that. Now, it's not saying, like what Joe was saying, there's a lot of, I don't want to say they rip people off, but there's a lot of watches that aren't, like you're saying, aren't worth the money. You don't have any of the features that you could get if you went with a different brand. But it goes back to, you don't know what you don't know.
You know what? Yeah, you know what it is, Matt. It's like in the beginning with guitars or cars or whatever it is you're collecting. You always first go after the beauty. You never check. You don't know to like check the oil and you know what I mean. Like you're just like, wow, that's a beautiful car. That must be expensive. Same thing with watches. I went after like the bling and the shine and the it's so big and complicated. That must be valuable, you know. And now you know better. Now you look under the hood. You know, you want to see what's under the hood. You want to check off all these boxes that you never checked off when you first started.
I think if somebody new came to me, because I've talked to people at work about this, and they look at me like I got, bugs crawling out of my eyes or something. I was like, because this was my first real luxury watch, was this Omega Seamaster. And I said, got a watch. I'm talking to my buddy, and he's like, what kind is it? What's Rolex? Because everybody knows Rolex. It doesn't matter. Everybody never. And I'm like, no, man, it's Omega. Never heard of it. I'm like, what? First watch on the moon? Come on, but work with me here. No, never heard of it, man. Never, so they don't know. But I think I would ask somebody, what's your budget? What type of style of watch do you like? Dress watch, divers, steel sports watch. What's your budget look like? What's your lifestyle look like? And then I would definitely say, Chris is a big fan of this, and we've talked all about it. I'd say go gray market. Don't go into an AD and buy nothing. That would be my structure of my advice, would be, what's your budget look like? What's your lifestyle? What type of watch do you like? And go gray market. That would be it for me.
So 2 things. People know that you guys love watches, right? People come to you and they always ask you about a watch. But the first thing, even when you started collecting, and the same thing for me and a lot of people, the first thing that you're noticing in a watch is the way it looks, especially when you don't know anything else about the watch. Now, I guess the goal of a fashion brand is to look fashionable, and it looks good. You know what I mean? And if I say to someone, hey, that movement watch, it costs you like $300. There's an SKX for $350 on Amazon. They're gonna look at the SKX and they're gonna be like, no. And here's the reasons why it's better. A, B, C, and D, and they're gonna be like, yeah, but it's not. Doesn't have like a really clean dial. That's kind of what I'm going for.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time when someone asks me for advice, I'm like, all right, there's a Seiko, and they're like, yeah, but it says Seiko on the dial, and I'm like, yeah, Seikos are really good. Well, yeah, I kind of like
it's not cool.
There's just a Filippo Loretti I saw. It's luxury watch. I'm like, no, that's BS. Don't go for that.
Don't believe that.
But if they like the look of it, there's nothing you're gonna do. There's nothing you can say. And if that person wants to eventually collect watches, they're gonna go down the same path that a lot of other people go through, and just say, oh crap, I bought that Filippo. I've owned like Average Joe. I've had like Fossils. I've had Movados. So I
had a Michael Kors.
I think you're selling your Movado on eBay right now, right?
Right now as you speak. Yes, sir.
Is that a fashion watch? Absolutely. That's a fashion watch. Don't let anybody tell you
$1,000 fashion watch.
Exactly.
When it was new.
When I was in high school,
that was the thing to wear.
Yeah, the two-tone museum dial.
I had guys at the gym.
Was cool.
I had guys at the gym in their tank tops lifting weights with their Movados on.
It
looks so stupid,
Ridiculous. But if you told me in high school, Chris, that watch for $500, that $1,000, that Movado museum dial, don't get that. Go for the Seiko SKX, or go for like some micro brand that you've never ever heard of. I would be like, no, I'm gonna go for the Movado. I know the Movado. When I go to the mall, the Movados, that's the coolest watch at the mall. I'm gonna go for that.
I would agree the same thing. And I've been in that situation. I tell people, I say, okay, look, it's your money. You spend it the way you want. I'm trying to caution you off of years of experience and save you a
Right.
little bit of money and headache, but I'll see you in a year when that watch stops working. That's what I usually tell him. I said, I'll see you in a little when that watch stops working.
There you go. Yeah.
You'll come back to me and go, hey, my watch stopped.
I told you so.
And I'll be like, told you so. And then you'll go out and you'll buy the watch that I told you to buy. And now you just spent double the money. So,
And it'll last, right? Yeah.
And that's because you've made the mistake already for
exactly.
them. So
That's the
it's
fun of
different,
it. You
though.
making the
Right.
mistake yourself is the fun of it, and you
Yeah.
know darn well that you wouldn't take someone else's advice. So why would they take yours?
Right,
So
right. And
I don't
that's
even
why
waste my breath
I
to
just
see
give
what you
them
want.
that. Yeah, I give them that. I'm gonna go, but you're a grown,
Yeah,
you're a grown
you gotta
person.
just
Do
walk
what you
away.
want. You know,
That's what Dave is
Right.
saying. Like it
Dave
looks
is-
good
yeah.
with your outfit. Like it
Mhm.
looks good. It's
Yeah.
the first thing that you're gonna. That's the first thing that you're gonna gravitate towards first. And
Yeah.
then it's like, it's like with collecting anything. If you collect cars, you may start out with like if you're Jay Leno, you
Oh,
start
God.
out with all the big ones. You're buying
yeah.
all the Ferrari. Then all of a sudden you're buying this like obscure Toyota Caravan that was made
Yep.
in 1969
or
and
a
there was
fire
only 7
truck,
of them
or-
made.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. You're right.
That's where we are.
Mhm.
But the person starting out, they want the obvious choice that looks good. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think with fashion watches like movement that Dave's been mentioning, he said earlier in the chat that he started out with a movement watch. That's what got him into watches. So in a way, it can be good to get people into the hobby, and as long as they don't stay there,
Yeah.
kind of progress and learn. I think that's better in the end. But I mean,
People with collections of Invicta watches, they have
Yeah,
hundreds of them. They
nothing
spend
against them.
thousands upon thousands
Right.
of dollars.
yeah,
So
I've nothing against them. Not saying that, but
it's up to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but do you look? Because I've mentioned this before, and I don't know how many people have heard this. I got a buddy at work that does that. He buys these Invictas, and he's got a ton of them. And I don't go down, but I'm thinking to myself, and I don't want to hurt his feelings, so I don't say anything. But I'm thinking to myself, with all that money you spent, you could have bought an Omega. Heck, you probably could have bought a Rolex for all that money. Buy your one Rolex and be done with it. But he doesn't know any better. His Grail watch is a Hublot, so he obviously doesn't know any better.
What was I gonna say? I forget.
But I was gonna say,
go ahead.
Before one last thing. I got a buddy, also another buddy at work. He's a Marine Corps officer. He's got a couple Breitleys, a Tag Heuer, so he knows a little bit about watches. But he never heard of microbrands. I tried to tell him one time. I think I was with that second hour, that Gin Clear, Chris, that you sent me and I reviewed. I was wearing that at work, and I was trying to show it off to people. I was like, "Man, this is great watch, value, given all the specs and the money." And he's like, "Well, I've never heard of them." What I said, "Oh, it's a microbrand." What's a microbrand? And I'm like, you never heard of that before? I was like, dude, you got Breitleys and Tag Heuers, and I never heard of microbrand. Like, okay, so a lot of people, they just don't dive this deep into the hobby.
I never did until just over the last couple of years. Actually.
And now, if you run across somebody with a microbrand on their wrist, you're like, he gets it, he knows.
Yeah,
Right. And that kind of leads into another subtopic related to this, is like if someone came to you and said, I'm wanting to start collecting, what are some watches that you would kind of point them to? It can be a brand, maybe a specific watch, certain style of watch, maybe like mention 2 or 3 if anything comes to mind. But before you do my wrist check, I'm wearing that Orient TriStar with the Eastern Arabic numerals. It's got the Arabic day.
cool watch.
Got it about a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't really taken it off. I've been wearing it all the time. Really cool piece. The only thing, the bracelet on it is, just cheap fold over links, I think is what they call them.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Straps Co, and they're sending me a couple of bracelets to put on this. So I think I got one of their president bracelets, and they're gonna send me a mystery one. So hopefully this kind of ups it up, takes it up a notch, makes it even better. But I like this watch a lot.
Where did you buy that from?
I got this off of eBay.
Oh, okay.
From a seller in Saudi Arabia. So
Nice.
makes sense. Yeah. What'd you say? It's fake.
I said
Yeah, it's
fake.
I don't think
Oh no,
so.
I'm sorry. You didn't buy it on Wish, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, all right. You might be okay, but you're still, running a risk.
That's right. Yeah. So what do you guys think? Someone new to watches comes up, and what are some watches brands that you would point them to say, hey, start with these. Look at these.
We have a couple guys in the comments here that are
Yeah.
they're saying that Orient is the new Seiko, and
Yeah.
I think the panel here could probably agree with that, considering all the QC issues Seiko is having, and the fact that they're bumping prices up, yet they're not improving the quality. Orient is, definitely one of those
on the list.
brands.
Absolutely.
So that would be my first thing, because I think you can get an awesome dress watch. One of my favorite dress watches, next to my Tissot Lilac Powermatic 80, is the Orient Bambino. That's definitely number 2, and that watch is, again, $100 and maybe $20, something like that. It's just a beautiful watch, very clean dial. It's got the blue hands, cream dial, Roman numerals. It's beautiful. In-house Orient movement. I mean, can't go wrong with that. Beater wise, you can get a $10, $20 Casio that's going to last you a lifetime. Under $500, if you want Swiss, I go Tissot and Hamilton all day. Also, look into these micro brands. Swiss watch companies coming out with an incredible field watch that actually I want to include in my personal collection.
It's really nice.
That one beats out, I hate to say it, but it's beating out Hamilton for many reasons. It's got SWC has 16 layers of AR coating. They even put a sapphire coating on the top of the sapphire crystal so that it protects. Because even my Breitling here, the AR coating rubbed off the top. So with this SWC, that's not going to happen. They also put the 20 layers of super luminova. Hamilton doesn't do that. So, I mean, this is a watch that's going to be in my personal collection. So if you guys haven't taken a look at micro brands, I would highly recommend SWC. I saw someone down here with Zelos. What else we got? I mean, we've got so many micro brands that I'm like, you guys are more. I know Chris is more versed in the micro brands than I am, but this is probably like my first year that I'm really starting to look at them. Josh, there's one that I really liked. Laurier, right? Is that what it was?
Oh, yeah.
Laurier?
Yeah. That reverse
they were
panda.
a little bit pricey, though. A couple of them were like in the $700 range with Miyotas and the acrylic crystals. But, some of you guys might be into that. But, there'd be a couple of my suggestions. I think a lot of these guys have right in the comments here with Orient being the new Seiko.
Sure. Guys, got any other thoughts?
No, I agree 100% with that. That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say a Casio, a Tissot, and Orient. Definitely check out Orient. And I've heard the same thing, that Orient, I have 2, maybe 3, and they're great watches.
Yeah.
And they're cheaper than Seiko, and they seem, just like Joe said, they seem to have better QC than Seiko, and I know they're owned by Seiko, but with Seiko bumping up his prices, he's 100% right with that.
But if you want that loom, though, you got to go Seiko.
Yeah.
So I think Seiko has the most affordable watch with the most incredible loom. But that's only one aspect. So if you're a loom fan, you might be a little disappointed with Orient.
Yeah.
I still like Seiko, though, even for entry. I mean, even though they have QC problems, I mean, there's definitely some amazing watches. And like you said, Lumibrite is pretty amazing. One brand that I definitely would include there as well is Timex, because
they're killing it lately.
I feel like they're coming out with a lot of really cool watches. They're very affordable, and they're doing a lot of collaborations and other things. Hodinkee and Todd Snyder, all these different Q Timexes they're coming out with. Affordable, really good looking. They have history, something that Seiko has as well. That's why the Orients, I've never gotten into them, and I definitely want to check out a couple of Orients. I'm gonna try and pick one up soon. I want to see what they're about. But I've always been a Seiko fan, so I always go to Seiko first. If someone's asking me for advice, then I say Timex, because I feel that they're affordable, and then I always go to micro brands like Notice, Zelos, specific ones, and of course other micro brands that are bigger and smaller, like Christopher Ward, and watches like that. So
Yeah. So the consensus is pretty close for everybody here. It seems like micro brands, people would point others to micro brands who are kind of new into collecting, and the brands we all know and love, Timex, Seiko, Orient. That's good stuff. Some other people have been mentioning some specific micro brands. Phoebus, I've never had any hands-on time with them. Someone also mentioned, Islander watches that Mark at Long Island Watch has been putting out over the past couple of years. I think he's doing a great job. I mean, their designs,
He is.
for the most part, they're designs that come from Seiko, it seems like, but better materials, probably better quality control, cheaper. So that would be a good place to look. What do you think about that, Chris? Saying, you still love Seiko, but something like an Islander that's kind of basically Seiko, but what do you think?
So I think we've had this conversation on another live stream where we're sort of toting the line between history and quality, because a lot of watch collectors care about those sort of things. So if you care about the history of a brand, that's why a lot of people in the brand recognition, people know what you have on your wrist, whatever. There's a fine line. So Seiko have a very long history of watchmaking. They have a long history of dive watches, of dress watches, of technology that they've created. They've created some incredible watches, some incredible technology, movements, historic watches, chronographs. I mean, everything, But again, they've tried to move up market. They do have some QC issues. It's hard to get a watch that doesn't have some sort of little tiny QC issue with most of their watches, unless you're going to the upper echelon of their line. And I'm not talking about Grand Seiko. I'm just talking about like the LX.
Presage.
Like the Presage still have, but they don't have chapter ink, so it's easy not to.
And they have the cheap bracelets and everything too.
They have cheap bracelets on them. It depends on it depends on the Presage too, because they have the ones with the 4Rs and they have the 6Rs, and then up, and then some of them even have spring drives in them, and those are very high end, and they're thousands of dollars. So I mean, the thing is that you're toting that line. So if you care about that sort of thing, then you're going to go with you're going to go with a brand like Seiko. If you don't care, the Islander makes sense, because you're getting that look, but then you're getting a sapphire bezel, or you're getting a fully loomed dial, things that Seiko don't do. And then you're getting a solid bracelet. You could buy an LX right now for $5,000 from Seiko, and it's an awesome watch. It has a spring drive movement. The bracelet's incredible. The watch is incredible. It's beautiful. Push pins. They're so reluctant in putting in screwed links. Now, do you need to have screwed links on your watch? No, it doesn't make any difference. People go crazy over it, and they'll say, I don't know why Seiko, you don't really need it, as long as you have, half links and there's micro adjust. You could get it fitted for your wrist pretty easy. You do it once and that's it.
Right.
The screwed links are nice because it's like an engineering thing. They had to make these tiny screws, and I have to use a tiny screwdriver, and it's fiddly, and I like that. That's me. I want that. I readily admit that, but I mean, it's not something that's necessary. Anyway, but I'm just saying that the Islander, they are using a Seiko movement in it, and then they are making it look like a Seiko. It's an homage, and then they're upgrading certain parts of it to make it a little bit better. But they don't homage the higher end Seikos. They don't make an homage to the SBDC 061 because of two reasons. It would be a lot more expensive for them to do that, and because they can't put the 6R movement in it, because I think Seiko sells them, but they're very expensive. And number two, the quality on that watch is very, very high. The Zaratsu polishing, the The bracelet's solid. The milled end links, milled clasps, drilled lugs. It's a higher end watch. So they don't do that. So they can't homage those. So, and if they did, it would cost them more money. So it's if you want that type of watch with that type of history, you got to go to Seiko, or you got to go to Tissot, or you got to go to Timex, or you got to go to, that's it. Timex makes cheaper watches, but
yeah.
I think I saw an interview with Mark from Island Watch, and he hit it right at the right time because they discontinued the SKX, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, he did it exactly.
Right at the right time. And then he addressed everything that watch YouTubers and the watch community, they said they want screw links.
Really
he
smart.
Did it. They said he wants
Really
sapphire.
smart.
He did it. They said they want, ceramic or sapphire bezel inserts. He did it. They want everything to line up. He did it. They want good bracelets, solid end links, milled clasp. He did all that stuff, put it out, and it looks exactly like an SKX with upgraded stuff and upgraded materials, and now they have the 5KX took its place, and it doesn't have a screw down crown. A lot of people, are not happy with those from what I see, read online and see on YouTube.
Watches, though.
They do look good.
Yeah.
But a lot of people
100
claim
meters
that
water resistance without screw down crowns. People want an ISO certified 200 meter dive watch. Even though no one goes diving, I'm one of those people. So I'm not saying no one goes diving. I'm saying that I actually got into an argument with someone who actually owns a microbrand because I had said that I wished that the watch had it came with a mineral crystal, and I said in the review, I was like, I wish this had a sapphire crystal. It makes more sense, especially at this price because of blah blah blah. And then I got this long email from him saying, it's much better for diving if you crash your watch against a rock. It won't shatter. It'll actually just scratch. It takes a scratch. It doesn't take it. And I just responded to him. I was like, listen, I completely agree with you. That does make sense. However, 99% of the people who are buying this watch don't dive. And if they scratch, if they're wearing their watch and they are walking into their office and they scratch it against a doorknob, they're going to be pissed off. Oh, yeah. They want a sapphire crystal. They don't want the watch to scratch. That's the point.
And Dave made a good point in the comments too. That Islander is compatible with all Seiko mods. Anything that fits a Seiko, slap it on that Islander, and it works just the same. And they're under $300.
That was really smart of Mark. I mean, man,
really smart.
I'm really happy for him. I'm sure he's doing well with all that and coming out with more watches. A field watch, I think, bunch
Pilot's
of stuff.
watch.
So Pilot's watch. Yeah, good for him. You guys think you'd ever want to create your own watch? Have you thought about it?
That's about where it stopped.
Yeah, I guess in passing, and then when
I've
you
been
realize
thinking
how
about
much
it.
work and money it takes, like, oof.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy thing for sure. Yeah. So another thing that, Chris, when you were talking a little bit, I was thinking about that's kind of related to this collection progression that people go through over the years is the history aspect. And how, for you guys personally, has history of a brand become more important to you as you get deeper and deeper into collecting watches and, you get more years collecting? Has history become a part that you cherish now and you want more in the watches that you buy?
Well, I'll tell you what, I actually just made a trade this week. I promised I was gonna sneak this in here. I'm actually trading a new technology, the Bull of a Precisionist, which basically is an Invictus size watch, but it has that super smooth sweep of the second hands. That precisionist movement is unbelievable. But I'm actually trading that for a vintage smooth sweep, the Acutron Space View. I've been in a closet about getting this watch, and here's actually the 2020 Space View right there.
Really cool.
Right there. There we go.
Right there you go.
So for me, that's a pretty historical thing because that's a 1962, and that was groundbreaking technology then, man. I mean, that was the first and one of the only quartzes that you could get with a smooth sweep hand. And you know, honestly, I mean, I think this is definitely a collector's piece and something that I've had my eye on for a while, and I've noticed they've gone up a little bit in value as well. But certainly a really cool watch. So history certainly does play a role, at least in some of my decisions with watch collecting, for sure.
Huge history behind Acutron. Acutron was used by mostly NASA. NASA used Acutron for most of their non uh, astronauts. So they made an astronaut watch, and they called it. They were trying to race against Omega, and they were trying to compete against all these other brands that were trying to get onto the moon. But a lot of people who work at NASA wore Acutrons, and specifically the Space View was the whole way that actually came about was a salesman's watch. So when Joe Schmo salesman would go to, Macy's to sell the buyer at Macy's Acutrons, he had, the whole Acutrons, they all had dials on them. And then he had the one without the dial to show them the movement. And look, this is how the movement looks. And they were like, oh,
we
don't want those. We want that. And eventually they were just like, okay, we'll make that. That's it. Now that's how that came about. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah.
So that's my only exception to the skeleton rule, because I know we were talking about skeleton watches before, and I'm basically like liquidating my skeleton watches at this point. I've either given them away or sell them on eBay, but now I'm bringing one back in. But this is a quartz movement, and it's an iconic piece. So
yeah, it's different than a typical skeleton watch.
Yeah.
How about you guys, Matt and Chris? As far as the history, has it become more important to you?
Not really. I recognize it, and I do say I do appreciate. Like I was looking again, scanning watches all over Joma's shop and all this other kind of stuff today, and looking at like Breitling is the 1880s. Zenith was like I think 1865. Some of these Swiss brands, you learn as a company, you learn a lot of stuff over 200 years. Or 150 years. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that I'm not taking anything away from these guys that start up, micro brands or watches made in China or any of these new startups, because there's a lot of innovation and stuff there. And as technology progresses, but there's something to be said about 150 plus years of experience of making wristwatches. So absolutely. I tend to lean towards, Swiss watches because of that, and watch Swiss watch company, even like Tissot and some of those who were
Tissot 1853, Hamilton 1892.
You see what I'm saying? So
they're older than Rolex.
But as far as like history, not too much, not yet. I'll probably get into that stuff, but
sure.
I think like Peter C makes a good point where he says, yes, history is important to me, but to a point. That's kind of how I am a little bit, I guess. It's important to me as a collector, I guess. It's a lot of people love Omega. They love Omega because of the Moon Watch. There's a million different iterations of the Moon Watch, of the Speedmaster. And I guess part of it is you buy a Ferrari because you want to feel like Magnum PI or Miami Vice or whatever. I guess you buy the Omega Speedmaster because you want to feel like you're an astronaut. Maybe you buy the Velcro strap and you wear it on the outside of your jacket. I don't know. You know what I mean? And you sit in your son's toy rocket, but I don't do that. But I'm just saying it's something that someone might do, and it's it's cool. It's history, but to a point. I mean, there are watches out there that you can buy that don't have a history. And they are amazing watches. And then eventually they're starting out, there's some brands that don't have history. Eventually they will have a history, but that doesn't mean they're worse watches than the ones with history. No. In fact, they could be much better watches. And a lot of times they are. But there's that, again, it's the brand that you're buying. That's the lore of the brand. That's it. Which marketing, all that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you got to start somewhere. A new brand, you can never have history if you don't get started. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, obviously that takes a lot of time to gain that recognition and history. Well, that's good. I got a few more things to talk about here. I mean, we're hard to believe already 55 minutes in, but I'll just throw a couple of these out as maybe we start winding down the conversation. Just quick thoughts on this. Like, what are some of the hottest watches in your mind that came out this year? Now we're down at the end of 2020, so just some watches that stand out in your mind that came out this year that you really like.
Omega
Timex.
Snoopy Moon Watch.
Oh
Yeah.
Yep,
damn!
big
I
one.
was.
I know
wasn't-
Joe's all about that one. I saw that video. I'm all about it too. That thing is hot.
I was even talking about that today with my fiance.
That thing
Don't
is
don't get
hot.
Average Joe started on
Yeah,
that.
I know that thing is
Oh,
hot,
man.
man.
I'm like, should I just sell a couple shares of Tesla? Get
Yeah.
that? But I made a final decision. I was like,
Mhm.
look, Tesla's going to go way up still, and that moon watch, yeah, I'm going to like
Oh,
it at
you
first.
wait till
but
next year. You'll be able to pick it up in the secondary
that's,
gray market.
I mean, that's what I'm
Yeah.
hoping for. But
Mhm.
look, I mean, anything that I've really wanted material wise, you get sick of it after a while, and
Mhm.
I never get sick of making money, so Tesla's there to stay.
Yeah, yeah.
But
There
for
you
me,
go.
I think it's the Timex Q series.
Mhm.
Because I don't necessarily like. Sometimes I don't like vintage watches because of the size.
Mhm.
Now, granted, the Acutron that I'm getting is a 34.5, which I would
Oh, wow.
never ever wear 34.5. But
Wow.
that's because it's an earlier version. It's a 62.
Yeah.
You get one in the later 60s, Chris, right? It's like a 40 millimeter
No,
or close to it.
39, yeah.
38, 39. So, but I'm going to rock this, 34.5. But with the Timex Q series, you're getting that modern technology, but with that vintage look. So I like what they did there. So and I also like the fact that they put a Snoopy on one of the dials too. That doesn't help, or that doesn't hurt. So
Yeah. That's good. How about you, Chris? Some watches that stand out this year?
Oh man, there are a ton. Baltic just came out with the GMT. Laurier came out with the GMT.
Yep.
I think those are going to be pretty hot. That Baltic is pretty nice.
it's a nice looking watch. Yeah.
Mito, there's a watch that is actually a watch that I've wanted to buy, but is selling for, I think it's like double the price on eBay right now. The Mito Rainbow Decompression Diver. Have you guys seen that?
I have.
It's
Oh.
a pretty
That
cool
one's
watch.
cool. Yeah.
It's really cool, and you can't buy them. They're like, I wanted to buy one, and you can't even get it. There's a few. I really like the. I think SoCal just got it. It's the SBDC
Yeah.
101. I think I don't remember which.
Is that the
it's
62 Moss
62
or whatever they
Moss
call
3.
it?
Yeah.
Those are
So
nice.
They've come out with a few different versions of it. Now they finally came out with one that has a 6R movement that looks like the original and has a 40 millimeter case. They kept on coming out with other versions, and the one that looked like the original on a strap had an 8R movement or an 8L. I don't remember. It had an 8 series movement in it, which was astronomical, and they sell for over the list price, and it was tough to get. So they came out with that. I've got my eye on that. And that's really it. Yeah. There's so many watches.
It's hard to keep up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up.
Also, one for me. I actually do. I know some people. I guess they debate about. But I like what Rolex did with the Oyster Perpetual, making it a little bit bigger, and I kind of dig the weird colors. I do.
blue,
I'm getting
the
so
Tiffany.
tired of just the silver, the black dial, and when they came out with the orange, red, whatever color it is, yellow, the blue,
Yeah.
they look good.
They're selling for double.
I saw that video.
That's
I
nuts.
saw that. I don't get it. I don't get. That's insane.
Which video did you watch?
The one from Watch Collecting Strategy,
Okay.
where he went. I think it was auctions in Hong Kong. He reviewed. Was that the one or?
No, I'm talking about Roman.
Oh,
Jarrett.
oh.
Yeah, he was talking about it. Yeah.
Nice. So 2020 is almost over now. Hard to believe. Hopefully 2021 will be better in a lot of ways than this year. But just thinking in the watch realm, what are some trends that you expect to see with new watch releases this coming year in 2021? Anything that comes to mind that maybe will carry over from this year, or do you think people will do something different? Anything that comes to mind with different trends for new watches?
Smaller watches.
Yeah.
I used
But
to be,
Rolex just went bigger.
Bigger, I know.
yeah, but Rolex, they went bigger, but so like the Submariner was 40 millimeters and went up to 41 millimeters, but they look exactly the same because they took down
They thinned the lugs.
the lugs, so
Yeah.
so it looks the same. That they didn't want the watch to wear differently. It wears exactly the same. I think a lot of brands have stopped making large watches. That's it. They're not doing it anymore. I used to love large watches, and then I sort of, because I still like Panerai. Panerai, I think, are one of the few brands, because they started the trend of large watches, and then everybody followed suit after them. I think they still make, I mean, because their original design was a large watch, and they were the original dive watch, it makes sense that they are large watches, and that makes them, I think, a good idea. The one watch that you should buy if it's large, that should be a large, because they even make 38 millimeters now. But if you're going to buy a Panerai, you should be buying a 44 millimeter, because that's what the original 47 millimeter. That's what the originals were. But every other brand has come in on size. Every other brand is coming in on size, and when a brand comes out with a 44 millimeter, people kick. And they're like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I think related to that would be companies, I think, seem to be doing a lot of vintage style pieces. Like that Baltic GMT is kind of a vintage style, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a copy, and it's not it's got its own unique case, but it's an homage to two watches, the GMT Master Rolex, and then the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. That's because it's called the Aquascoff, which is the bathyscoff, basically, is what all Baltic watches are modeled after this watch, and that's a 38 millimeter watch. This is a 37.5 millimeter watch.
Yeah.
This is from the 1960s. So
Yeah, that was big.
I see that trend continuing. People just kind of almost reissues vintage type pieces.
You know what trend I'd like to see slow down, though? Is these darn homage pieces. I mean, I was just having a conversation with David Schwartz a little bit earlier, and I was just like, I could take Josh's fake Tudor, rip off the Tudor, put my name on it, Average Joe, and call it a homage. Because I'm not trying to pass it off as a Tudor. Now it's my own brand.
Right.
So I'm kind of getting a little bit, I don't know, it's getting a little old for me. I want to start seeing a little bit more originality. I like to see these brands like Timex and, whatever, like Longines putting out heritage pieces. But man, I mean, I'm just seeing microbrand or I don't know if you can even call them a microbrand, but just these brands that's coming out with the same old homages. They're just like copying the homages or homaging the homages.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's getting ridiculous, man. And I'm off that train, man.
It's insane. What I can think off the top of my head, maybe 20 Chinese Rolex Submariner homages.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 different companies. Just I could probably rattle them off. Every time you turn around, you're like, what? Another Submariner homage?
I mean, how hard is that? I mean, really?
Then you got to ask yourself, they must be selling them.
Oh, absolutely
like Invicta, they must be selling them to somebody who's buying these.
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
Not selling to me, though.
No.
I'm not a buyer.
Right. Yeah, it'd be nice to see some of these, because some of them make quality pieces like San Martin.
Yeah.
Some of the Pagani design stuff seems to be pretty good. If they could just become a little bit creative and original, like Sanford is saying here. Originality is expensive. I guess it does take time to figure out something, and it's risky too, because you don't know if it's going to stick when you do something new. So it's really the easy way is going with something that's been out for years. People love it already. It's just the easy thing to do, just to make another copy, you know?
And
I don't know,
how many, go ahead.
I'm looking for a disruptor in 2021, man.
Yeah.
You know, I like brands that go against the grain, you know,
Mhm.
and that's why I like Christopher Ward. You know, you got everybody complaining that the Christopher Ward's not at the 12 o'clock. I like Christopher Ward because they put it at the 9 o'clock, even though people say they don't like it. I like you, Christopher Ward. You keep doing you.
Yeah. Another thing is how, talking about these companies going back, 200 years, how many different ways can you do the same, the same basic wristwatch. It's a wristwatch. They're basically the same design. You just kind of make a little bit of different details. You might contour the lugs a little differently, but they kind of all fit into the same design because of the way the human wrist is. So I think they struggle. A company like Formex with that little cushion case springy thing, that's cool.
Yeah, very
stuff
unique.
like
Chris's
Ming.
Acutron, man. I mean, how
There you-
cool is that?
there you go. That's cool.
So original. You know, I love that.
So maybe if they did stuff like that.
But there's the argument that, and I've made this argument, every watch is an homage. Almost every watch. It's very. We said that. We just said like things like the Acutron. That's different. That's like
They're the original, so they're homage.
very
themselves.
different. Yeah, exactly. And they've been homaged, right? I mean, there's definitely Acutron homages out there. They've tried to, and not even homages. They've other brands like Seiko have come out with, other watches that look sort of like it. They try and do whatever. Anyway, Pulsar and all this, right? But the thing is that, I mean, Rolex was an homage. Again, like, they weren't the first dive watch, and there's evidence of that. And they essentially stole their design from Blancpain. And that's what, to come up with an original design is hard. To use ideas from other brands, and that's what all microbrands do. There's no microbrand that is in a completely 100% original design. If they are, they're very, very expensive, and they're really not a microbrand anymore. So
that would be that. Would that be like Ming?
Ming, yeah,
Ming, exactly. So I love Ming. I made a video about that where I just said I love you, Ming. Like, please make more watches. But the thing about that is Ming is expensive, right? I mean, they're not cheap watches, and that's the thing. So the affordability factor comes in, and then there's the originality factor. So I've reviewed 2 watches on my channel that were carbon copies of the original watches. Jeanneau Ocean Rover. I mean, it was a replica Rolex Submariner. I mean, to the T, and it was awesome. I gotta say, I really thought it was a really good watch. It was really well made. It's a fake Rolex, essentially, with Jeanneau Ocean Rover put on the dial. And they did a couple of things that were a little bit different. They put a ceramic bezel rather than a steel bezel insert. That's kind of the And then I recently reviewed the Sharkmaster from Heimdallr, which is a carbon copy of the Marine Master 300. It's like almost every aspect of that watch, except for the clasp, was just a little bit different. Mine even said Marine Master on the dial. It did not say Sharkmaster. And I looked around and I was like, some of them say Marine Master, some of them say Sharkmaster. It shouldn't say Marine Master. It's not a Marine Master, but they named it Marine Master. They put a shark instead of a Seiko logo. Awesome watch, actually. It's pretty good. It's pretty nice. It's a very nice watch, very well made. But it is essentially a replica with the name Heimdallr put on the, Sharkmaster or a shark.
But you know what? Like, you got like what Eve said. Some of these homages are really out to. Their intention is almost to deceive. There's like absolutely zero originality. I mean, to me, it's like I know. Look, every watch pretty much is a copy. Like, how many different original designs can you come up with? I mean, it's over 200 plus years, right? But I mean, at least give it some effort, guys. I mean, maybe 90%, so that 10% is your design, 5% is your design.
I'm
But
just playing
you're seeing like
I'm just playing devil's
99%.
advocate.
I know you
all-
are. I know, and I think
and
it
the
makes
other
for,
thing
it makes
is
for a good
that-
show too.
Yeah, I mean the Rolex buyer, and I'm pointing to the Rolex buyer, right?
Oh yeah.
So I mean the person who's buying the Rolex, you're paying overprice, you're paying over list for a Rolex.
Mhm.
Someone's going to turn around and say, you know what, I like the style of that Rolex. I don't want to pay the money for that Rolex. Janot makes one for $1,200. It's exactly the same. It has a Swiss movement or whatever the hell. They have a whole problem behind them anyway. But there's like controversy about how they're actually made. But they're such complete replicas. They're if someone would have to grab your wrist and look at it and say, oh, that's not a Rolex. It's something called Janot. Okay, whatever. But it's a lot of money. I mean, is it? You're spending so much money on that Rolex, and to buy a Submariner right now, you're going to spend $15,000 on a $7,000 watch.
Yeah. Some of them are like $17,000. Hell, those Kermits and those Hulks. The Hulk
If you
that
want
just
a green bezel or a green dial, forget about it.
$22,000.
Yeah,
they're asking. That's insane.
Right. But Steinhardt make it for $800.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Is a Steinhardt a bad watch? No.
No.
I think they're nice watches. I do think that they make a good watch. There are cheap replicas out there that they like steel, like I'm not going to say Steel Dive. Steel Dive make good watches, but there are brands that are on AliExpress that make really crappy watches where they'll take the watch that Josh got off of Wish. They'll take the name off of it. They'll put their name on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a cheap Chinese movement in it.
Right.
And there are Chinese movements that are good. They're not putting those in. They're putting in the bargain basement cheapest watch movement that they could put into it. They're putting a very cheap bracelet on it. It's going to not last you. It's going to break. They charge you $100 for it. Maybe you can buy one for $30 off of Wish or whatever it is. Now that I don't agree with, but and again I'm playing devil's advocate because I play the other side of this as well. I agree with you guys, but I'm just saying that there are reasons why people go out and buy an homage.
Sure.
Mainly because of those reasons. Price, they want that style. They don't want to pay the $20,000.
Yeah,
that's it.
Have you ever bought an homage though, thinking it was going to scratch that itch, and then after a little while you're like, dang, I still really want the real one.
Yeah, I did. And I went out and bought the real one eventually.
So then you end up, in the end, you actually ended up wasting more money because you're like, wow, maybe I can't really afford. That's kind of where I'm at now. And don't get me wrong, I'm older now, and I have more established and have the disposable income to afford some of these things. But I've noticed that if I impulse buy something and it looks just like an Omega Seamaster, oh, that'll scratch the itch, and I go out and buy it, and I'm like, nah, it didn't. I still want the original.
Yeah,
I would have been
What
better
if
off saving up and waiting.
But what if you're never going to be able to afford it?
That's true.
Because the Omega Seamaster, is attainable. Because if you wanted the Omega Seamaster, you could buy a quartz version or an older automatic version for $2,000 or $1,500 or somewhere around there. So if you're buying the homage for $300, yes, there's an ability to save and buy that $2,000 watch. You could do it. That's not out of the ballpark. But what if it's the difference between, the $300 and $22,000? That's a big difference.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? That's your kid goes to college for 1 year, or daddy wears a Kermit. Like, come on. Yeah. Like that. There's what if you want a GMT? God forbid. I mean, you're talking about 20, in the upper 20s. So it's kind of like,
Yeah, this is a big topic for sure. I think it could deserve its own show. Absolutely. We could keep going on it. Absolutely. I think a lot of people in the comments, well, it's kind of mixed. Some people, it seems like, aren't for homages. Some people are. But But like you said, Chris, that's something I never really thought about, was what if you can never afford it? Because some people make the case, so I'm going to get the homage to try out to see what the real thing is like, see if it fits on my wrist type of thing, see if I like the feel of it. But yeah, I never thought about what if you can't really ever afford the real thing. So that's a good thought.
I have a question
All right,
for
go
you
ahead.
guys. With these homages, you know, what if they put Swiss made when it's a Chinese movement? Would you guys like be against that? Right? That's a complete
Jeannot,
absolute.
so that was the whole controversy behind Jeannot. But the thing is that there's a whole lot of rules behind that Swiss made moniker, and again, we talked about that in another video, I think. But I mean, if they're putting a Chinese movement into a watch that has Swiss made on the dial, unless they have actually produced that watch in Switzerland, because there are watches with Japanese movements in them that have the Swiss made name on the dial. If they're doing it, if they're making the entire watch in China and they're actually putting a Chinese movement in it and then putting the Swiss made movement name on there, then it's a fake watch. That's different.
Right.
So
and it's kind of leading to my homage argument here, because we see a lot of these homages that say superlative chronometer
or some version of that, usually spelt wrong.
200 meters.
Now we're talking about
resistant.
crappy homages, though. These are really crap. That's crap.
Yeah.
But nobody talks about the absolute rubbish on these homage dials. They're putting the actual lettering from the original watch saying it's a 200-meter water-resistant watch, when you can't even like step in your bathroom and run the shower and have the biscuit into the crystal.
There was a channel, I Like Watches, he had to restart it. Did you hear about that whole thing? How he sold an homage watch. So where he got caught, and somebody snitched on him, and I think they torpedoed his channel on purpose. He's back up and running. It seems like a good dude. Gary. He apparently he reviewed a watch that was a Rolex Submariner homage, and it said Submariner on it. But apparently Rolex has copyrighted that name, or they own the name Submariner for watches. He sold the watch. Somebody complained to YouTube that he was selling fake Rolexes, and they killed his channel for that because of the Submariner name. So you're right. And it was, I forget the brand, but it was some.
It could have been like a Laurier or something.
Something like that, from China. It was
Pagani
from China.
Design, they're all doing it. And that's, again, you're crossing the line. Like, it's basically like they're copying it exactly, taking off the Rolex, putting on Pagani Design or whatever. And like, so that's kind of like the argument I'm getting into here is like, is that okay? Because like nobody talks about it. It's like, oh, this Laurier has this huge water resistance and it's chronometer certified, superlative, and
Laurier don't do that. Laurier are actually a pretty decent brand. They're based in New York. They make really good watches. Actually, I in my opinion, they make very nice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think there's another one called Lorio.
Lorio.
Lorio. Oh, Lorio. All right, that's different.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So I agree with you on that. Laurier, I was like, Laurier.
I like
them.
Yeah, that's good. You guys want to start winding it down? Or you want to keep going?
Your channel, brother. If you got the viewers, I'm game. So you got 23 watching right now. So.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Got some new people. I think it's their first time stopping in. I just saw Zanea Watches pop in the chat as well. I just unboxed one of their Eula divers with a meteorite dial. So if you guys don't know Zanea Watches, you can check them out.
I'll have to go check them out.
I'm going to put out the full review of that video hopefully Tuesday. So we'll start winding down here. Just before we leave, guys, what are some things that the viewers can look for on your channel this coming week? Maybe something exciting that you're planning to put out that you want to share ahead of time. Anybody want to share any of that?
Tomorrow morning, I have a video coming out comparing a vintage Hamilton versus a modern day Hamilton. And I have them side by side, and I go through, pretty much everything that I can look, feel, and touch. And that video is coming out tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Cool. Anything else you guys want to share coming on your channels?
I got to do a state of collection. I've been putting it off, but I want to do one of those before the end of the year. Seems that like that's what everybody does. So I got to knock one of those out.
They're good. Yeah. I love
cool.
a good state of the collection
Yeah,
video.
me too. I like
I'm
people's.
going to do a state of collection.
Okay, yeah.
Last year, I think I did 3.
Oh.
but I have over 100 watches, so it's going to take a little while.
Yeah.
You might want to do a part 1,
Part
two,
and 3. Yeah.
part 3.
I don't know. I don't want to
Make it a mini series.
You can speed through them like Average Joe did.
Yeah,
you got 53 in 30 minutes.
That's right.
I had to take an energy drink before that though. So,
man. Well, I think
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm also unboxing the DIY watch kit.
Nice.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
I'll be actually putting my first watch together, which is very exciting. It's a really cool kit.
That'll be cool.
But I can't recommend it until I try it. So stay tuned for that.
Nice.
Sorry, Josh.
I think David Schwartz maybe the 12-hour live stream you guys have planned, Average Joe. You want to tell us a little bit about that? Tell us a little bit about that. Put a plug in for that.
So, all right, thank you. So instead of doing 12 days of Christmas, we're going to do the 12 hours of Christmas on December 13th, which is a Sunday. We're going to start at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to end it at 10 p.m. We have special guests lined up for every hour on the hour.
That's cool.
I was actually able to get a couple special guests like Jody from Just One More Watch. I call him the king of what we do, so he'll be on the channel. Just to Watch Dave. I have the Traveling Watch Project. I have SWC coming on, and we just have a bunch. We have a bunch of just great guests coming on each hour. Normally, I would have invited you guys, but I mean, I spent so much time with you guys already, man. I'm sure you don't want to see my ugly face for even another hour. So, no offense to you guys. I'm sure you don't take any offense to that, but
No, that sounds cool.
I hope you can see in the chat at least.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
it's gonna be a good time, and I don't know. I was thinking about doing it maybe like in the bathroom because I mean, how am I gonna get up? It takes or maybe just.
Get snacks ready and stuff.
You're gonna have a fill-in for you or something.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a lot of fun, man. I'll tell you, I've never done anything close to that, so it's we'll see how this goes.
Cool. It's a marathon.
That's gonna be sweet. Very unique. I think it's gonna be fun to pop in on that.
Thank you for plugging that, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I wanted to ask you before we leave. Did you get the watch I sent you from Wish?
No, I did not get it yet.
I haven't been looking at the tracking.
I looked at it before. It was It was in New York State, so it should be hopefully tomorrow.
What do you got planned on? You want to share what you have planned for that, or you want to keep it a secret?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I know I'm not gonna. I can't. I definitely don't want to do what you did because you've done it already. So I I've had. I told this story as well. I bought a watch off eBay. It was a Tudor.
Yeah.
It was a different quality than the one that you got. So the one that you got had a Chinese movement in it. You wore gloves. It was great. And
the Chinese, the nice Swiss writing on the package.
Swiss writing on the package. I think a lot of people really like that. That was really fun.
Yeah, that was awesome. That video's killing it, by the way.
It's crazy.
Doing really well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. I have to think about it. I'm not sure if I want to compare it to that watch. Or I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I look forward to whatever you got planned.
Chris, do you still have that other Tudor that was a fake?
Yes, it's in I have it with the case back. It's in a. I just literally what I said I was going to do with it is I threw it into a drawer. I never even put the case back on it. So it's just sitting there.
Cool.
Yeah,
let's just.
I'd be interested to see the quality between that one and the one I sent you. Yeah,
I was thinking about doing that because the one that I have actually has like an edda movement in it.
Yours is probably better, yeah.
Which I don't know for sure that it's an actual edda movement or a Chinese clone of an edda movement.
Sure,
but it is an edda. It looks like an edda movement. It looks like a 2824. So. I mean, even that movement alone as a replica movement is an expensive movement. I mean, those are not cheap movements.
Right. Yeah.
They're like
So it's
40, 50
definitely
bucks,
better
just-
quality than the one
yeah.
I sent you then.
So it's interesting. I'd like to compare the two.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think next week for everybody in the chat, we'll be back on Watch Chris's channel. Is that right?
Mhm.
We are, yeah, I think so.
All right. So that would be December 11th.
Yep.
I'll take your
Okay.
word for it.
Yeah.
Something like that. But stay
Sounds
tuned.
right.
Friday.
Yeah. If you're not subscribed to all these guys, if you're in the chat right now, if you're tuning in, get subscribed to Rock the Watch, Watch Chris, and Average Joe. They got a lot of great content, and keep pumping out that content. So you're going to want to be subscribed to each of them. So good show today. I think it was a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Thanks again to everybody in the chat for adding to the conversation and supporting all of us and our channels.
Mhm.
We appreciate you, but we'll sign off for now, and we'll see you next week. See ya.
Thank you, guys.